The quantum disruptor activated at precisely 1441 hours Galactic Standard Time, deep in the fusion core beneath the Kalari capital city. For the first 30 seconds, nothing seemed to happen. The massive reactors continued their steady humming. Lights remained bright and the combat in the arena above continued without interruption. Commander Thuron had been dominating the fight against Colonel Park, just as everyone expected. The human warrior fought bravely, but his smaller size and limited augmentations made victory impossible against a cybernetically enhanced Kalari champion. The crowd cheered each time Thuron landed a devastating blow. High Chancellor Vexen watched with satisfaction from his royal viewing box, surrounded by the greatest military leaders in Kalari history. This demonstration of their superiority would be broadcast across the galaxy, ensuring that no other species would dare challenge their empire. But at 1441 hours and 32 seconds, the first fusion reactor began to overload. The cascade effect that Dr. Kang had predicted started as a minor fluctuation in energy output, quickly spreading to adjacent reactors through the interconnected power grid. Deep underground automated safety systems tried desperately to contain the growing instability, but the quantum disruptor had introduced changes to the fundamental structure of matter itself. The very atoms that composed the fusion fuel were beginning to break down in ways that Kalari science could not understand or control in the arena. Colonel Park was losing badly, blood streaming from multiple wounds as Thuron methodically demonstrated Kalari fighting techniques. The human colonel knew his role was to die as dramatically as possible while drawing maximum attention, but he was running out of time and strength. 1442 hours, the planetary power grid began experiencing massive fluctuations. Every light in the capital city flickered as the fusion cores struggled to maintain stable energy output. The crowd in the arena noticed the disturbance, but assumed it was caused by some minor technical malfunction. Thuron paused in his systematic destruction of the human opponent, looking up at the flickering arena lights with the first hint of concern. His enhanced senses detected vibrations in the ground, subtle tremors that suggested something was wrong with the planetary infrastructure. Sergeant Kim Tae-ho sat in the diplomatic viewing section, watching the timer on his wrist count down the final seconds. The device in his backpack was now monitoring the cascade reaction in real time, confirming that the chain reaction was spreading exactly as predicted. At 1442 hours and 45 seconds, every fusion reactor on the planet began overloading. Simultaneously, the safety systems that had protected Kalari civilization for thousands of years failed in the span of 3 seconds as exotic matter interactions overwhelmed their ability to respond. The ground began to shake. Viol, the transport ship carrying Sergeant Kim Tae-ho, dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kalari home system, exactly 12 hours before the scheduled combat challenge. The vessel looked like an ordinary diplomatic courier designed to carry official representatives between worlds, but hidden in its cargo hold was equipment that could destroy a planet captain. Song Mi-young made final adjustments to the quantum disruptor while Tae-ho checked his infiltration gear one last time. The device that would end billions of lives fit easily into a standard military backpack, its smooth metal surface giving no hint of the devastating power contained within. Intelligence reports indicate that 90% of the Kalari population will be watching the combat challenge, Song said without looking up from her work. The entire planetary defense network will be operating at minimum staffing levels since they expect no external threats. Tae-ho nodded as he secured the disruptor to his equipment harness. The weight felt strange against his back, knowing that he carried the power to commit genocide in a package smaller than a suitcase. Every human transport arriving in this system had been thoroughly searched, but the Kalari had never encountered quantum cascade technology before. Lieutenant Park Jin-ho, the mission communications specialist, established a secure link with Earth Command, giving them real-time updates on Kalari military movements. The enemy fleet remained in standard defensive positions, showing no signs of increased alert status. They are completely focused on the challenge, he reported. Admiral Vex Corvani himself has arrived from the outer system to witness what they expect to be a demonstration of Kalari superiority. Every major military commander in their empire will be in that arena. The irony was not lost on any of them. The Kalari had gathered their entire leadership to watch a human warrior die, never imagining that this concentration of their command structure would make the coming disaster even more complete. as their ship approached Nexus Corvat. Tai-Ho studied detailed maps of the capital city, memorizing every street, tunnel, and building that lay between the spaceport and his target, the underground. Route to the fusion facility had been planned down to the last meter, but he knew that no battle plan survived contact with the enemy. The spaceport was crowded with beings from across the galaxy who had come to witness the historic combat challenge. Most seemed excited by the prospect of seeing human military power crushed by Kalari superiority, but a few looked nervous, as if they sensed that something momentous was about to happen. Commander Thuron waited in the arena preparation chambers, undergoing final medical checks and equipment calibration. His body had been enhanced with cybernetic implants that increased his strength, speed, and reaction time to levels that no unmodified human could match. The Kalari champion felt confident about the coming battle despite his humiliating defeat in the space station bar. That had been a moment of carelessness when he had underestimated human reflexes. This time, he would be prepared for anything the humans could attempt, what Thuron did. Not know was that the human he would face in combat was not Sergeant Kim Tae-ho. Instead, Earth Command had sent Colonel Park Jun SEO, a career soldier whose job was to provide a convincing fight while drawing maximum attention away from the real. Mission Park had volunteered for what amounted to a suicide assignment, knowing that his role was to die as dramatically as possible while buying time for the infiltration team. His family would be told that he died defending humanity, and they would never know the true nature of his sacrifice. The combat arena was filled to capacity with over 200,000 Kalari citizens, plus representatives from dozens of alien species. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation as beings who had traveled across the galaxy to witness this historic moment took their seats. High Chancellor Korth Vexen sat in the royal viewing box surrounded by the most powerful military leaders in the Kalari Empire. The aging ruler looked forward to demonstrating his people's superiority before such a distinguished audience. Down in the arena preparation areas, Tai-Ho made final equipment checks while monitoring comm traffic between Kalari security forces. The enemy remained focused entirely on the combat challenge with minimal attention paid to routine security protocols around the city, at exactly 1400 hours Galactic Standard Time. The ceremony began with traditional Kalari war chants that echoed through the massive arena. The sound was deafening, as 200,000 voices joined in songs that had celebrated military victories for thousands of years. While the crowd was distracted by the opening ceremonies, Tai-Ho slipped away from the diplomatic viewing area and made his way toward a maintenance access tunnel that intelligence had identified 3 months earlier. The entrance was hidden behind decorative stonework in the arena's lower levels. The tunnel system dated back to the original construction of the Kalari capital and extended throughout the city like a vast underground network. Most of the passages had been forgotten over the centuries, but Earth intelligence had spent months mapping every corridor, chamber, and access point. Tai-Ho moved through the tunnels using night vision equipment to navigate without creating light that might be detected by security sensors. The air was stale and filled with the sound of massive machinery that powered the city above his head. After 30 minutes of careful movement, he reached the outer perimeter of the fusion facility. The security here was more sophisticated with motion detectors, thermal scanners, and automated defense systems that could kill an intruder instantly. But human intelligence had anticipated these defenses and provided countermeasures for each obstacle. Tai-Ho deployed electronic jamming devices that created blind spots in the sensor network, allowing him to advance toward his target undetected. The fusion chamber itself was a cathedral-sized space filled with machinery that represented the pinnacle of Kalari engineering technology. Massive reactors hummed with barely contained energy that powered every military installation on the planet. Tai-Ho placed the quantum disruptor in the exact position that Dr. Kang had calculated for maximum effect. The device would need exactly 8 minutes to integrate with the fusion core before beginning its deadly cascade reaction. As he activated the disruptor timer, Tai-Ho heard the crowd in the arena above cheering as the combat challenge officially began. Colonel Park would now be facing Commander Thuron in single combat, buying precious time for the mission to reach completion. The return journey through the tunnel system took longer than expected as Kalari security began random patrols in response to minor sensor anomalies caused by his jamming equipment. Tai-Ho had to detour through sections of the tunnel network that added crucial minutes to his escape route. When he finally emerged from the underground passages, the combat in the arena had been raging for over 6 minutes. The crowd was cheering wildly as their champion demonstrated Kalari fighting prowess against the seemingly outmatched human opponent. Tai-Ho made his way back to the diplomatic viewing area, just as the quantum disruptor reached the final phase of its activation sequence. In 90 seconds, the device would trigger a chain reaction that would destroy everything on the planet. He looked around, at the faces in the crowd, Kalari children excited to see their peoples. Superiority demonstrated alien diplomats taking notes on human military capabilities, reporters preparing to broadcast news of humanity's defeat to worlds across the galaxy. None of them knew that they had less than 2 minutes to live. The timer reached 0 at exactly 1441 hours Galactic Standard Time. Deep beneath the Pentagon in a classified briefing room that did not officially exist, Major Han Sung-min stared at holographic displays showing the Kalari homeworld from every possible angle. The three-dimensional images rotated slowly, revealing mountain ranges, cities, and most importantly, the massive military installations that protected the planet from invasion. Sung-min had spent 15 years studying asymmetric warfare, the art of defeating enemies who possessed overwhelming advantages in firepower, technology, and numbers. His expertise had been developed through conflicts across Earth where smaller forces had learned to triumph over superior opponents through intelligence planning and sheer determination. The briefing room was filled with the most elite special operations personnel from every branch of the human military: Navy SEALs, Army, Green Berets, Air Force, Para-Rescue Marines, Force Recon, and agents from intelligence services whose names were classified above his. Clearance-level General Choi Byung-ho entered the room, carrying a data tablet that contained information so sensitive that only 12 people on Earth were authorized to access it. The old soldier looked tired, as if the weight of human civilization was pressing down on his shoulders. "Ladies and gentlemen," the general began, his voice carrying the authority of absolute command. "You have been selected for Operation Prometheus, the most critical mission in human history. Failure means the enslavement of our entire species. Success means we commit an act that will forever change how the galaxy views humanity." The holographic display shifted to show detailed schematics of Kalari fusion technology. Dr. Kang Yu-jin, the physicist who had discovered their vulnerability, stood up to address the assembled warriors. Her hands shook slightly as she began to explain the science behind their desperate plan. "The Kalari homeworld is powered by a centralized fusion core system," she said. "The entire planetary, defense grid, energy weapons, orbital platforms, and shield generators all draw power from interconnected fusion reactors buried deep beneath their capital city." She manipulated the holographic display to show cross-sections of the underground facility. The images revealed a maze of tunnels, chambers, and massive machinery that represented thousands of years of advanced alien engineering. "If we can introduce a quantum cascade disruptor into their primary fusion chamber," she continued, "the resulting chain reaction will cause every fusion reactor on the planet to overload simultaneously. The energy release will be equivalent to several thousand nuclear weapons detonating at once." Colonel Park Jun-seo, who had helped develop the plan, added his own analysis. "This is not a conventional military strike," he said grimly. "We are talking about planetary annihilation. The explosion will crack their world apart at the molecular level, killing every living thing on the surface." The room fell silent as the full scope of their mission became clear. They were not being asked to defeat an enemy army or capture strategic objectives. They were being ordered to commit genocide on a scale that had never been attempted in galactic history. Sergeant Major Kim Tae-ho sat in the front row studying the mission parameters with the cold professionalism that had made him one of Earth's most effective special operations soldiers. He had volunteered for the mission immediately after hearing about the challenge, knowing that his bar fight with Commander Thuron had started this crisis. "The infiltration route will take you through maintenance tunnels that were built during the original construction of their capital city," General Choi explained. "You will have approximately 10 minutes from the time you enter the facility until the combat challenge begins. Every Kalari warrior and civilian will be focused on the arena, expecting to see their champion destroy a human opponent." Captain Song Mi Young, the demolitions expert who had designed the quantum disruptor, raised her hand to ask a question. General, what about evacuation? There will be billions of innocent civilians on that planet, including children who have never harmed any human. General Choi met her gaze without flinching. Captain, he said quietly, we estimate that a Kalari invasion of Earth would result in the death or enslavement of 8 billion humans. The moral mathematics are clear. We cannot save both species, so we must choose our own. The weight of that choice hung heavy in the air as the assembled special operations personnel absorbed the reality of what they were being asked to do. They were soldiers who had sworn oaths to protect innocent life. Yet they were being ordered to destroy an entire world. Lieutenant Colonel Park Hae-jin, the mission psychologist, addressed the room. Her job was to ensure that the team members could psychologically handle the unprecedented stress of committing mass murder. Every person in this room will carry the memory of this mission for the rest of their lives, she said. Some of you may develop what we call survivor guilt, even though you are saving humanity. Others may experience delayed stress reactions that could last for years. She paused to look at each team member individually. You need to understand that there is no precedent for the psychological impact of destroying an entire civilization. If any of you have doubts about your ability to complete this mission, you must speak now. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The silence stretched for long minutes as each warrior wrestled with their conscience and made their choice. Between duty to humanity and moral revulsion at genocide. Duty 1. Sergeant Major Kim raised his hand and General Choi nodded for him to speak. Sir, he said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to volunteer for. I request permission to carry out the primary mission alone. The fewer people involved in this operation, the better for everyone's psychological health. General Choi shook his head. Tai-ho, this is not a suicide mission. We need you alive to testify about what happened here. The galaxy will demand answers, and you are the only person who can provide them, without compromising classified information. The plan was elegant in its simplicity, and terrifying in its implications. While Commander Thuron and billions of Kalari citizens watched the combat challenge expecting to see human defeat, Sergeant Kim would infiltrate their most secure facility and plant a device that would destroy their entire world. Dr. Kang activated another holographic display, showing the quantum disruptor itself. The device was surprisingly small, about the size of a briefcase, but contained enough exotic matter to trigger a fusion cascade that would tear apart the molecular bonds holding a planet together. The disruptor will activate automatically once it reaches the fusion core, she explained. You will have approximately 30 seconds to reach minimum safe distance before the chain reaction begins. The explosion will be visible from orbit. General Choi closed his data tablet and stood to address the team one final time. In 18 hours, he said, humanity will either be free or enslaved. There is no middle ground, no negotiation, and no mercy from our enemies. We go into this mission knowing that we are choosing between two forms of mass death. He looked around the room at faces that showed determination, fear, resolve, and the grim acceptance of warriors who understood the price of survival. May God forgive us for what we are about to do, he concluded, because the galaxy never will. The briefing ended, and the team dispersed to make final preparations for a mission that would either save humanity or damn them forever in the eyes of every civilized species. The countdown to Operation Prometheus had begun, and there would be no turning back. The medical bay on Nexus Prime buzzed with activity as alien doctors worked to treat Commander Thuron's paralyzed nervous system. The Kalari warrior lay on an oversized medical table, his purple-scaled skin pale with shock and humiliation, while diagnostic machines beeped and hummed around him. Dr. Zeth Morvani, a 6-armed insectoid being from the Centauri system, had seen many combat injuries during his 30 years of practice, but never anything quite like this. The human had struck, with surgical precision targeting nerve clusters that most beings did not even know existed. Your nervous system is undamaged, Commander, the doctor explained in his clicking language. The paralysis was temporary, caused by precise disruption of neural pathways. You will recover full mobility within the hour. But I must ask, how did such a small being know exactly where to strike? Thuron could barely speak through his rage and shame. That human fought like he had studied Kalari anatomy for years, he whispered. His voice shook with anger. No warrior has ever defeated me so easily, not even other Kalari champions. Word of the fight had spread through the space station like wildfire. Beings who had been in the bar were telling and retelling the story to anyone who would listen. Each telling made the human seem more impressive and the Kalari commander more foolish. Some versions claimed the fight lasted only 2 seconds. Others said the human had used supernatural powers. Lieutenant Park, so Min, a human intelligence officer attached to the diplomatic mission, heard about the incident within 20 minutes. She immediately understood the potential consequences of what had happened. The Kalari Empire built their entire political structure on military superiority, and this public defeat could trigger a major crisis. So Min rushed to the medical bay hoping to speak with Thuron before he made any rash decisions. She had studied Kalari culture extensively and knew that their honor code demanded satisfaction for public humiliation. The warrior would be obligated to restore his reputation or face exile from his own people. When she arrived at the medical bay, she found Thuron sitting up on the treatment table, his yellow eyes blazing. With fury, his forearms flexed and unflexed as feeling returned to them, and she could see him planning something dangerous. Commander Thuron, she said carefully, speaking in formal Kalari language. I am Lieutenant Park, representing the human diplomatic mission. I want to apologize for what happened in the bar. Sergeant Kim was not acting on official orders. Thuron turned his burning gaze on her, and she felt a chill run down her spine. This was not just anger, she realized. This was the cold fury of a professional killer who had been made to look weak in front of his enemies. Your apology means nothing human, he growled. The damage is done. Every being in this sector now knows that a Kalari warrior was defeated by one of your kind in single combat. My honor is destroyed unless I can prove that this was just luck. So Min felt her heart sink. She had hoped to contain the situation through diplomacy, but she could see that Thuron was beyond reasoning. The warrior code that made Kalari soldiers so effective also made them predictably violent when their pride was wounded. What do you intend to do, she asked, already dreading the answer. Thuron struggled to his feet, towering over the human officer. His massive frame cast a shadow across the medical equipment, and his scaled features twisted into a savage smile. I will issue a formal challenge, he declared, his voice carried across the medical bay, making several alien patients turn to stare. Your strongest warrior will face me in single combat on my homeworld. If he wins, humanity keeps its freedom. If he loses, your entire species becomes tributary to the Kalari Empire. The challenge system was an ancient part of galactic law, dating back thousands of years. It had been designed to prevent large-scale wars by allowing disputes to be settled through individual combat. Most civilized species considered it barbaric and outdated, but it remained legally binding under interstellar treaty. So Min knew that refusing such a challenge would brand humanity as cowards in the eyes of every species in the galaxy. Their trade relationships would collapse. Their diplomatic missions would be expelled, and Earth would become isolated and vulnerable to attack. But accepting the challenge seemed equally disastrous. The Kalari homeworld was defended by weapons that could crack planets in half. Their warrior culture had conquered dozens of civilizations over centuries of warfare. What chance did humanity have against such overwhelming power? Commander, please reconsider, she said desperately. This incident was just a misunderstanding. There is no need to escalate it into an interstellar crisis that could cost millions of lives. Thuron's laugh was like the sound of breaking glass echoing through the medical bay. You think your people are strong because one soldier got lucky against me, he snarled. But I know the truth. Humans are weak. Soft creatures who hide behind technology and diplomacy. When forced to fight with honor, you will crumble like dust. Across the space station, in a communication center that buzzed with alien languages and holographic displays, war correspondent Lee Jin-woo was uploading his footage of the bar fight to news networks throughout the galaxy. As a human journalist, he understood the significance of what he had witnessed better than most. The video file contained 12 minutes of crystal-clear recording showing every detail of Taeho's lightning-fast victory over the Kalari commander Jin Woo. Had been in the right place at the right time, and now he possessed the most important piece of footage in recent galactic history. He watched the view counter climb as beings across hundreds of worlds accessed the file. 10,000 views became 100,000, then 1,000,000. The galactic net was buzzing with commentary analysis and wild speculation about human combat capabilities. On Earth, military leaders were receiving emergency briefings about the situation. General Choi Byung-ho sat in his Pentagon office watching the bar fight footage for the 15th time, trying to understand how one drunken altercation had created an existential threat to human civilization. The Kalari Empire controls 17 star systems, his intelligence. Officer Captain Yoon Dae-jung reported. Their military consists of over 50 million warriors equipped with weapons we can barely comprehend. If they decide to invade Earth, our defensive systems will last approximately 6 hours. Choi studied the tactical displays showing Kalari fleet positions and military installations. The numbers were overwhelming. Even if every human nation united their armed forces, they would be vastly outmatched by Kalari military power. But there was something about the bar fight footage that gave him hope. Sergeant Kim had not won through luck or accident. His movements showed years of specialized training designed specifically for fighting larger, stronger opponents. The human military had been preparing for asymmetric warfare since the early days of their space program. Perhaps the galaxy had underestimated what desperation and human ingenuity could accomplish when properly motivated. Choi began formulating a plan that was so audacious, it bordered on insanity. If they could not win through conventional warfare, they would have to rewrite the rules of engagement entirely. Meanwhile, on dozens of alien worlds, military analysts were studying the bar fight footage and reaching disturbing conclusions. These humans might be smaller and weaker than most galactic species, but they had clearly spent their entire evolutionary history learning how to kill things bigger than themselves. The betting markets were already heavily favoring the Kalari Empire, with odds of 1,000 to 1 against human victory. But a few perceptive beings noticed something troubling in the footage. The human soldier had shown no fear, no hesitation, and no mercy when violence became necessary. Perhaps this challenge would not be as one-sided as everyone assumed. The Great Council chamber on Nexus Corvat had not seen such activity in over a century. Representatives from dozens of species filled the massive amphitheater, their voices creating a symphony of alien languages as they discussed the unprecedented challenge that had been issued against the human race. Commander Vex Thuron stood at the center of the chamber wearing the formal battle armor of his rank. The purple scales on his massive frame gleamed under the artificial lights, and his 4 arms held the ancient ceremonial weapons that symbolized his authority as a Kalari war leader. High Chancellor Korth Vexen, the supreme ruler of the Kalari Empire, sat on his throne overlooking the chamber. His ancient, scarred face showed no emotion as he listened to Thuron's formal declaration of combat challenge, but his yellow eyes burned with interest. The challenge is issued according to ancient law. Thuron declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. Let the humans send their strongest warrior to face me in single combat. If their champion falls, their entire species will submit to Kalari rule and serve the Empire as tributary slaves. A murmur of excitement ran through the assembled representatives. Most had never seen a formal challenge issued, and the stakes were higher than anything in recent galactic history. An entire civilization's freedom would be decided by single combat between 2 warriors. Ambassador Kelix Thornian of the Andromedan Confederacy rose from his seat to address the chamber. The tall crystalline being spoke in perfect galactic standard, his voice ringing like musical chimes. High Chancellor, he began, this challenge seems excessive for such a minor incident. A bar fight between 2 soldiers hardly warrants enslaving an entire species. Perhaps a more measured response would be appropriate. Chancellor. Vexen leaned forward on his throne, his massive frame dwarfing even the other Kalari in the chamber. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of absolute power and the threat of immediate violence. The challenge has been issued according to law, he growled. The human defeated one of our champions in public view before witnesses from dozens of worlds. Our honor demands satisfaction and our strength. must be demonstrated to any who might question Kalari supremacy. On Earth, the emergency session of the United Nations Security Council had been going for 6 hours. Representatives from every major nation sat around the conference table in New York, while military advisors and diplomats argued about how to respond to an impossible situation. Secretary General Kim Min-soo had served in Korean Special Forces before entering politics, and she understood military strategy better than most diplomats. The situation reports spread across the table painted a picture of overwhelming Kalari military superiority. General Harrison spoke for the combined NATO forces, his gravelly voice filled with frustration. "We have exactly 48 hours to respond to this challenge," he said. "If we refuse, humanity will be branded as cowards and expelled from the galactic community. If we accept, we are sending someone to certain death against an opponent who cannot be defeated." Defense Minister Tanaka of Japan had been studying Kalari military records for hours. The data was terrifying. "Their warriors undergo genetic modification from birth," she reported. "They are stronger, faster, and more durable than any human could ever become. Their weapons can cut through our best armor like paper." But President Chen of China had a different perspective. "I have been reading the reports from our military advisors in space," he said quietly. "There is something these Kalari do not understand about human nature. We have never been the strongest or fastest species on our own planet, yet we became the dominant life form through intelligence adaptation and sheer stubborn refusal to surrender." Secretary General Kim studied the footage of Sergeant Tae-ho defeating the massive alien warrior. She had watched it dozens of times looking for clues about how such an impossible victory had been achieved. "This soldier," Kim said, pointing at the screen. "He did not win through superior strength or speed. He won because he had studied his enemy and prepared for exactly this type of encounter. What if our response to this challenge is not what they expect?" Colonel Park Jun-seo had been silent throughout most of the meeting, but now he leaned forward with the expression of a man who had just realized something important. "The challenge specifies single combat," he said slowly, "but it does not specify the terms of engagement. The Kalari expect us to send our strongest fighter to face their champion in a traditional duel. But what if we send someone with a different mission entirely?" The room fell silent as the implications of his words sank in. General Harrison was the first to speak, and his voice was barely above a whisper. "You are talking about assassination," he said. "Not combat assassination." Park nodded grimly. "The Kalari homeworld will be focused entirely on the combat challenge. Every warrior, every leader, every citizen will be watching the duel expecting to see their champion crush a human opponent. But while they are distracted, someone else could be completing a very different objective." Secretary General Kim felt a chill run through her as she began to understand the scope of what was being proposed. This was not just military strategy. This was planning the complete destruction of an entire civilization, the fusion cores that power their planetary defense systems, she said slowly. If those could be disrupted simultaneously, the chain reaction would tear their planet apart. Colonel Park confirmed. His voice was steady, but she could see the weight of what he was suggesting in his eyes. Billions of Kalari would die along with their entire military infrastructure. The moral implications were staggering. They were discussing genocide on a scale that would make them no better than the worst dictators in human history. But the alternative was the enslavement of every man, woman, and child on Earth. Defense Minister Tanaka broke the silence. Her voice was barely audible. "I have children," she whispered. "3 daughters who will grow up as slaves if we fail. Everyone in this room has family members who will suffer if the Kalari Empire conquers Earth." President Chen nodded slowly. "The weight of 8 billion lives rests on this decision," he said. "We can choose certain death for billions of aliens or certain slavery for billions of humans. There is no moral choice here, only necessary action." General Harrison stood up and walked to the window overlooking New York Harbor. "In 12 hours, he said, I will brief our best special operations teams on the most classified mission in human history. We are going to attempt something that every military strategist would call impossible." Secretary General Kim looked around the table at the faces of world leaders who had just agreed to authorize what might be the greatest war crime in galactic history. But as she thought about her own children sleeping safely in Seoul, She knew they had made the only choice they could make. Humanity had survived ice ages, predators, plagues, and world wars by being willing to do whatever was necessary for survival. This challenge from the Kalari Empire would be no different. They would adapt, overcome, and survive no matter what the cost. The die was cast, and in 47 hours, the galaxy would discover what humans were truly capable of when their backs were against the wall. Sergeant Kim Tae-ho sat alone in the dark corner of the space station bar, drinking his beer slowly. The metal walls around him hummed with the sound of alien machinery and voices speaking in dozens of different languages. Nexus Prime was the biggest trading station in this part of the galaxy, and beings from hundreds of worlds came here to do business. Tae-ho was tired after 3 months of training new human soldiers for space combat. His green beret uniform was wrinkled and his black hair needed cutting, but he did not care much about his appearance right now. All he wanted was to drink his synthetic beer in peace and maybe get some sleep before his transport back to Earth arrived tomorrow morning. The bar was filled with all kinds of alien creatures. Some looked almost human, while others were so strange that Tae-ho still felt surprised when he saw them, even after 5 years of working with different species. There were tall blue beings with 4 arms, small furry creatures that looked like walking carpets, and robot-like machines that clinked when they moved. Near the bar counter, a group of purple-skinned aliens were talking loudly in their rough-sounding language. Tae-ho recognized them as Kalari warriors from their distinctive scaled skin and multiple arms. The Kalari were famous throughout the galaxy for being the best fighters, and their empire controlled many star systems through military power. One of the Kalari noticed Tae-ho looking in their direction. The alien was huge even by Kalari standards, standing almost 8 feet tall with muscles that bulged under his purple scales. His 4 arms were each as thick as a normal human's leg, and his yellow eyes glowed with intelligence and something that looked like anger. Commander Vex Thuron had heard stories about these new humans who had joined the Galactic community only 5 years ago. The stories said that despite being small and weak-looking, the humans were surprisingly good at fighting. But Thuron found this hard to believe. How could such tiny, soft-looking creatures pose any threat to the mighty Kalari Empire? Thuron walked across the bar toward Tae-ho's table. His heavy footsteps made the metal floor vibrate, and other customers quickly moved out of his way. The bar became quiet as everyone sensed that something dangerous was about to happen. Even the bartender stopped serving drinks and watched nervously. Tae-ho remained sitting calmly as the giant alien approached. He had faced dangerous enemies many times before during his military career, and he knew that showing fear would only make the situation worse. His training had taught him to stay relaxed and alert at the same time, ready to react instantly if violence broke out. When Thuron reached the table, he looked down at Tae-ho with obvious contempt in his yellow eyes. The alien spoke in broken standard galactic language, his voice deep and threatening like distant thunder. "You are human, soldier." "Yes, I have heard stories about your kind. They say you think you are strong fighters." Tae-ho took another sip of his beer and looked up at the towering alien calmly. "Yes, I am a soldier," he replied in a steady voice. "But I am not looking for trouble tonight. Just want to finish my drink and get some rest." Thuron laughed harshly, the sound echoing through the quiet bar. "Your people think they are warriors, but you are nothing compared to Kalari might. We have conquered dozens of worlds, and our armies are feared across the galaxy. What can one small human do against a true warrior like me?" The other Kalari had moved closer, forming a circle around Tae-ho's table. They were clearly expecting their commander to demonstrate Kalari superiority by crushing this insignificant human. Other aliens in the bar pressed back against the walls, not wanting to get caught in whatever was about to happen. Tae-ho slowly placed his beer on the table and stood up. Even standing, he barely reached Thuron's chest, but his movements were smooth and controlled like a predator preparing to strike. His dark eyes never left the alien's face, and his hands hung loose at his sides, ready for action. "I told you I do not want trouble," Tae-ho said quietly. "But if you insist on starting something, I will finish it." Thuron roared with laughter again, finding the human's words absurdly funny. A creature so small threatening him was like an insect challenging a dragon. Without warning, his massive right arm shot forward, intending to grab Taeho by the throat and crush his windpipe. The alien moved fast for his size, but he had made a critical mistake. He had underestimated what 20 years of military training could do to a human being. Taeho had spent years learning to fight enemies who were bigger, stronger, and better armed than himself. His reflexes had been honed to superhuman sharpness through countless hours of combat practice. As Thuron's clawed hand reached for his throat, Taeho moved like lightning, his body twisted to the side, avoiding the grab while his left hand struck upward, hitting a nerve cluster just below the alien's elbow. The massive arm went numb instantly, and Thuron stumbled forward off balance. Before the alien could recover, Taeho struck 3 more times in rapid succession. His right fist hit a pressure point on Thuron's ribs, his left elbow smashed into another nerve center on the alien's side, and his knee drove upward into a vulnerable spot on the creature's lower abdomen. The entire sequence took less than 3 seconds. Thuron, the mighty Kalari commander who had never lost a battle in his 40-year military career, collapsed to the floor like a falling tree. His nervous system, overloaded by the precise strikes, shut down temporarily, leaving him paralyzed and gasping for breath. The bar erupted in shocked silence. Nobody could believe what they had just witnessed. A human barely half the size of the Kalari warrior had defeated one of the galaxy's most feared fighters in seconds. The other Kalari stared at their fallen commander, unable to process what had happened. Taeho looked down at the paralyzed alien without emotion, then picked up his beer and finished it in one long drink. He placed some credits on the table to pay for his drinks and walked toward the exit, stepping carefully around Thuron's motionless form. As he reached the door, he turned back to address the stunned crowd. "Your commander will recover in about 10 minutes, he said calmly. "When he wakes up, tell him that humans do not start fights, but we always finish them." The bar door closed behind him, leaving dozens of alien witnesses to wonder if they had really seen a single human defeat a Kalari warrior so easily. Unknown to anyone present, including Taeho himself, the entire encounter had been recorded by security cameras and broadcast live across subspace communication networks. Within minutes, footage of the fight was spreading through the galaxy, like wildfire reaching military commanders, politicians, and news networks on hundreds of worlds. The reaction was immediate and intense. Some species were impressed by human fighting ability, while others were terrified by what this might mean for galactic politics. On the Kalari homeworld of Nexus Corvat, the news hit like a nuclear explosion. The entire Kalari High Command watched the footage over and over again, unable to believe that one of their elite warriors had been humiliated so completely by a member of the galaxy's newest species. Commander Thuron would recover from his paralysis within the hour, but his pride and reputation were destroyed forever. The shame of being defeated by a human in public view would drive him to make a decision that would change the course of galactic history and ultimately lead to the destruction of everything he had sworn to protect.